Hey everybody, thank you so much for clicking on this video. Today I'm going to take you through a handful of traditional gym exercises, and I'm going to show you the best alternatives at home. But before we jump into the actual exercises, I want to make sure that we're on the same page about one simple thing. Exercise options don't actually have anything to do with the location that you're in. They actually have everything to do with simply the equipment you have access to. Technically, location is not a factor. It's what you have available in that location to lift. I get questions a lot about how to build your glutes at home or how to work out at home. And the answer is the same thing that you would do in the gym, but it really does just come down to what equipment you have access to. So through years of working with people, both virtually one-on-one and through an online fitness platform, I found that most people have access to a few sets of free weights and maybe a bench or a chair. So today's at-home substitutions are pretty much going to rely on those equipment options. And if this is your first time here, my name is Justina. I'm a personal trainer based out of New York City who works with people both one-on-one as well as in larger group settings. And one of my main missions on this channel is to simply provide some free education for people so they have better understanding of how their body works and how to structure a workout for their goals. So if that sounds good to you, I would love for you to hit that subscribe button so you can stick around. I have a very lofty goal of hitting 100K this year, so every little bit helps. But with that, let's dive into the first exercise. First exercise here is a back squat. This is a bilateral knee dominant movement pattern, meaning that it uses both legs and the primary joint moving is the knee. The main muscles targeted here will be the quads, but also a lot of glute. And you're gonna see more glute here recruited than in a front squat due to the more hinge-like pattern since the bar is on the back. Now we also have to remember that the amount of glute recruited also depends on whether you're doing a high or a low bar rack, but we're gonna save those specifics for another video. My recommendation for an at-home substitution is actually going to be a sumo squat. So this is going to be a bilateral squat variation without a barbell that recruits the most stretch on the glutes. The limiting factor here is honestly just going to be access to load because you can load this up pretty darn heavy. If you're someone who finds that they've kind of maxed out their dumbbells at home, you can do a few things here. You can play with tempo. So maybe you focus more on the eccentric or the lengthening phase. So that's going to be on the way down. Maybe you start to utilize some pause reps where you hold for a breath or two at the bottom. You can even play with 1 1/4 reps, which are a great way to increase that time under tension with that stretch on the glutes at the bottom. Now, please remember before we go any further in this video, I'm not saying these are perfect substitutions where you can elicit the exact same adaptation as utilizing a barbell. Obviously, load is going to be a limiting factor here, but it's always better to make a smart substitution if you need to, rather than just skipping your workout altogether or feeling confused. Moving into a lat pull down. This is a bilateral vertical pull movement, which means that we're using both arms, bilateral, and we're pulling the weight down vertical in relation to our body. The main muscles targeted here will be the lats, as well as the rhomboids, mid and low traps, and some biceps. An at-home substitution, I'm gonna say a pull-up. Honestly, this is gonna be the best bang for your buck and the most specific crossover in terms of movement pattern and tissue adaptation. Now, obviously, pull-ups are incredibly challenging, so utilizing something like an eccentric where you jump up, lower down slow, or even a band is a fantastic option. But a free weight option for those who either don't have a pull-up bar or don't have the capability to work on pull-ups at the moment is a lat pullover. Now, you can't really load this nearly as heavy as a lat pull down just because the path of the bell is a little bit different, but it is still technically a vertical pull since that's the direction the weight is moving in relation to your body. To make sure that you're really working through your lats, make sure you're taking a nice even tempo on the way back and on the way up, that we're not bouncing out of the bottom utilizing momentum. Next exercise is the bench press. This is going to be a bilateral horizontal push. Hopefully we're understanding what these words mean now. Bilateral, 2 arms, horizontal in relation to our body. And the main muscles targeted here are going to be the chest and then some shoulders and triceps. Now I think the substitution is fairly obvious. You can do a chest press with free weights. And just like with the back squat substitution, you could play with tempo variations like pause reps or really milking the eccentric. You can also change the angle to an incline bench to target more of the upper chest, which is also going to make this a bit more challenging. You know, these are solid options if you find that access to additional weight is your limiting factor here. But another substitution that doesn't require any equipment is a push-up. It's the exact same movement pattern, you're just using your body as resistance instead. And if you don't have push-ups from the floor quite yet, you can always elevate your hands on a bench or a chair to shorten the lever. And if you're looking to improve your push-ups or pull-ups, be sure to check out the 4-week programs located inside the Fit Club. Next exercise is a seated leg curl. So this is a bilateral knee dominant kind of movement pattern. We're going to discuss that a little bit more in a moment. The main tissues targeted here are going to be the hamstrings. We typically think of hamstrings as being involved in hip dominant patterns like deadlifts, but we have to remember that the hamstring crosses at both the hip and the knee. So when we curl the knees in, it's actually mimicking the bottom of a deadlift or an RDL in terms of stretching and loading. So that being said, obviously an option is something like a stiff-legged deadlift. But let's assume again that the limiting factor here is your access to heavy enough weight at home, because you can probably lift a lot more weight than you realize with your legs. We can actually do something like a Nordic curl instead. This is one of my favorite at-home variations because you really just need like a sturdy sofa or a sturdy chair or a sturdy partner to help get this guy done. You want to keep your hips fully extended as you'll slowly lengthen at the knees until your hamstrings can't support you anymore. And then just a pro tip, you want to keep a pad or a pillow in front of you where your hands will land so you don't irritate your wrists, and always land with bent elbows to help absorb that force. Next up, we've got the seated row. So this is a bilateral horizontal pull, and the main muscles targeted here are going to be the lats, as well as the rhomboids, mid and low traps, and the biceps. Now, in terms of substitutions, you can go the good old bent over row route, but I find that this can be really challenging on people's low backs, and that ends up kind of being the limiting factor in this movement pattern. So instead, you can try a head-supported row. I recently got assigned these from my coach, and I've been loving the support from the bench without diving into my low back too much. And if you don't have an incline bench at home, you can use any surface at any appropriate height with a pad or a towel on top of it. Now, if you find that the weight you have access to is the limiting factor here, you can also, again, play with the tempo, pause reps, alternating. There are a lot of options to get the most out of your equipment. And then our final exercise is the hip thrust. So this is a bilateral hip dominant movement pattern. The main muscle targeted here is going to be the glutes, and this is going to be a little different from something like a deadlift because now we're specifically loading glutes in the shortened position. And you can also make an argument that some hamstring is going to get in here as well. Now for a substitution, this is the first time I'm actually going to switch to a unilateral variation in this video, but I'm going for single leg hip thrusts. Honestly, without like a barbell or enough weight and a really good setup, it's just going to be way too hard to load the glutes heavy enough in the shortened position without a full hip thrust setup. Now, other ways to progress this, tempo variations are your best friend here, and even just adding a small amount of weight will up the intensity more than you realize. Now, these are probably the top exercises that I get questions on of how to substitute with free weights at home, but if you have another exercise that you'd like a substitution for and you aren't sure how to do it, make sure you leave it in the comments below. As always, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on future videos, and I will see you all in the next one.